Hey y'all, and welcome back to our channel. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I created this sunrise and sunset V-split tumbler using the glitters from glitter pack number 67 that I curated myself with PDB Creative Studio. Let's take a look at all of these glitters and we'll jump right into the tutorial. I don't know about y'all, but I am ready for warm weather and I wanted to put that into this pack. I had spring, summer, hot weather on my mind, lots of flowers. So we went with super bright and vibrant colors. My husband, my daughter, and I, all three gave these names, which was Wildflower, Juniper, Honeysuckle, Monarch, and Junebug. I bet you can't guess who named what. From the moment that I mixed these glitters, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So let me show you how we did this V-split with sort of an opposite ombre on each side. To create our perfect V-split template for our tumbler, I'm going to take some of my transfer tape. Reason I'm using transfer tape, and you can also use a stencil or removable vinyl, is because this was really easy to cut square since we had all of those nice lines. And I cut it to the exact dimensions of the height and width of my tumbler. And I set those scraps to the side because I can use that for decals later on. I'm going to fold the transfer tape in half, and then I'm going to cut from the center point to the outer point. This is going to create a perfect triangle for our V-split. Now we are going to spray paint before we apply this, but I do want to show you how I do that. I'm just going to trim off a little bit of that backing once our first coat of spray paint has dried, and then I'll use the hinge method after I have it lined up to wrap this around my tumbler. I grabbed the brightest colors, or the closest matching colors that I had in my spray paint collection. These glitters do have opal mixed in, so you are going to want to give your tumbler or whatever project you're working on some sort of base, because you will have a little bit of that color showing through those opals. These spray paints, the color shot, can be found at Walmart and I believe Michael's. We're using Hello Handsome, Clear Skies, and Farmer's Daughter. Then Spiced Amber from Krylon and Warm Yellow from Rust-Oleum. Like I said, this is all that I had. I didn't run to the store to get any specifics. I just got the closest colors out of my collection to match the glitters. After I get my ombre on here, you want to let this dry completely before you attempt to add on your stencil. I did jump the gun just a little bit and try to add mine on too soon. You'll see the little mark on my tumbler from where I added it on early. I gave it a little bit more time to dry, reapplied that stencil, and then we're going to do our ombre on the opposite side. Honestly, I have not gotten this good of ombre until I started using the Color Shot spray paints. The Rust-Oleum and Krylon are hit or miss as far as the consistency goes coming out of the can. The Color Shots are definitely my favorite and absolutely worth an extra couple of dollars because it has saved me a ton of time and wasted paint getting these nice ombres on my tumbler. So to get an ombre and not get your colors so close together, you want to hold that about 1.5 to 2 feet away from your can that you're spraying and go in short bursts. It's near impossible to do this if the wind is blowing, which it is a lot of times here in North Carolina. So that is why you don't see me fighting my spray paint and showing y'all this process in the majority of my tutorials. It's either windy, rainy, or dark outside when I usually spray paint. So once that second layer or the opposite side of ombre dries completely, we're going to go in with the full glue from Southern Belle Glitter. I don't use this stuff near enough. I absolutely love it and I always forget that I have it, but I usually use either the epoxy method or my glitter glue from Artistry. However, this you can dry immediately. Go in with your glitter color, which you get excellent coverage with this stuff because it is super tacky. I've joked before that you could probably throw the cup up against the wall and it'd stick. But once you have applied a generous layer, you dry this up with low heat setting with your heat gun. You'll know it's completely dry when all of the white is gone and it's crystal clear. apply your glitter, roll it or pat it down. And then my favorite part is you can spray seal this immediately. There's no waiting time in between glitter application and spray sealing or epoxy. So we just, as soon as we get our colors on here, we're going to immediately spray paint this. And as soon as that is dry, we can go in with epoxy. So it saves you quite a bit of wait time, rather using your glitter glue or the epoxy method to apply your glitter. Alright, so to ombre our glitter, we're going to go heavy around the top rim with our first color, which was Wildflower. I tilted my tumbler and allowed that to fall down into the section that we are using Monarch in. For Monarch, we're going heavy in the center of that section and then allowing that to flow up into Wildflower and down into our yellow, which will be Honeysuckle. And if you don't want to constantly tilt your tumbler up and down, sometimes that actually does hurt my wrist. So you just want to very lightly sprinkle your glitter and build up your coverage, and you can ombre that way as well. And then for our blues, we'll be using Juniper and then Junebug on the bottom. I know a lot of beach tumblers have the gold glitter at the bottom of them, and you can do that, but for this I wanted to use solely this glitter pack, and I was going to put my gold in my decals, which I knew were going to be somewhat centered on my tumbler or towards the bottom, so I didn't want the gold sand area, as I guess you would call it, to clash with my decals. Once you have finished that first layer of ombre, if you need to go back in and build some colors or blend them a little bit more, by all means, go in and very lightly sprinkle the glitter in the areas that you need. And then we're going to roll this in a sheet of notebook paper or parchment paper and flatten that glitter out really well. Now we did all of this with our stencil still on. Once we roll this up in our parchment paper or printer paper and flatten out that glitter, we're going to immediately go and spray seal this. I spray sealed it lightly 3 times so that that glitter was stuck and there was no chance of our opposite side blending in with this first side colors. And then we're going to do the exact same steps to ombre the glitter on this side. Now, some of you might ask why I didn't just do a complete opposite and just flip the glitters on the opposite sides, and that's because I didn't want my glitters to be the same in the center of the cup. So rather than having that pink yellow like ombre in the center, we have a pink and purpley looking color on this side. And my idea with this was to take 2 of my favorite things, which is a beach sunrise and a mountain sunset. There's literally nothing better, and put them on the same cup. So we have the beach sunrise first, and then the mountain sunset on this side. While we're working on our second ombre, let's talk about the PDB Creative Studio glitter packs. Glitter packs are released on Thursday of the second full week of every month. You can grab one at a discounted price 2 different ways. One is being a part of the PDB Creative Studio glitter group, and the other being on the subscription list. I'll have how to be a part of both of those linked down below for you, or in the description down below. And these colors actually release individually March 29th at 2 p.m. EST time or 12 p.m. MST time. And of course, my code for PDB Creative Studio is BBS21, and that will save you $5 off your entire order of $20 or more. Once I finished this ombre, then I did take a bristle brush on the opposite side that we had already sealed and knock off any excess glitter that might be hanging out over there. And then I sealed this tumbler 3 more times all the way around with Rust-Oleum matte clear coat because I did not want any of these colors to blend together. After the spray paint dried, I gave this a pretty generous coat of epoxy, sanded that really well, and then I could go in with my beach waves. I'm going to be honest, there are some creators out there that can make some pretty banging waves on a tumbler or a tray. That has never really been my strong suit, but we're going to give it our best. You can use micas, or there are epoxy additives that you can add in. I know Artistry Epoxy actually has a waves kit on their website, and I love it. And I had actually already tried that on another tumbler I started with these colors, and it was a total fail for me. Definitely me, not the product. So I went back to my Old Faithful and added in some micas to my epoxy to get those beach waves. Before we did that, I taped off my beach side, and then we're going to add a really thin layer of epoxy. I don't want this to be too thick because we're only doing one side of this tumbler, and later on going to add another clear coat on top of this. So very thin layer of epoxy. Once my epoxy is on, I am going to run over this very lightly with a torch to pop any micro bubbles, because we're not going to want to torch this after we add on our waves. We don't want to overheat this and cause them to go in places we don't want them to go. So we'll use the heat gun so we have a little bit more control on that. But for now, get rid of those micro bubbles before we add on the waves. For our waves, I'm using Snow Mica from PDB Creative Studio. I'm going to add a couple little scoops of this into about 5 to 10 milliliters of epoxy. Absolutely didn't need that much, but that's what I had left in my cup. And then I'm going to use my popsicle stick to add some streaking in between the colors on my tumbler. For my beach ombre tumblers, I always go from top to bottom with these. A little bit heavier on the bottom to mimic the waves, but you also have to think about clouds that might be in the sky. So I guess you could say we're adding beach waves and clouds as well. After I get those on, I'm just going to use my gloved hand, blend them out a little bit, and then come in with my heat gun and do a little bit more work to blend those in and make them look a little bit more like waves. I am using a fast set epoxy, so after I get my waves exactly how I want them, it is safe for me to remove the painter's tape. If you are using a regular epoxy, just give it about an hour or two to set up before you remove the tape off of your tumbler. All right, let's talk about decals. Pretty sour subject for this one because there's most tumblers that I make, I have sort of an idea in my head, but I go with the flow as I'm making the cup. This one, I have had this idea in my head for months now. I mixed this glitter a long time ago, and my original idea was to where you would normally put your pinstriping over the split sections, I was going to do a really swirly font that has the little flippy things at the end. I don't know what it's called. You probably know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I was going to take the words sunrise, sunburn up one side of the V-split, sunset, repeat, down the other side. So it'd be sunrise, sunburn, sunset, repeat, and it just kind of like a rotating idea, right? Well, the problem with that was the wording was shorter on one side, so I would have had to either elongate that or make it bigger, changing the dimensions of the font on each side. And that wasn't going to look right. So I searched Etsy for, oh my gosh, so many hours looking for the perfect beach decal and mountain decal to go on either side. I knew for sure I wanted to use the TeckWrapcraft gold metallic vinyl for my top layer, and then I had just enough of the white shimmer for an offset. So I was mega stressing over getting this decal lined up right so I didn't ruin the white shimmer. I went over to my window so I could get it lined up, and static just sucked the top down to my white offset. And as you can see, I'm on the struggle bus, but was sweating bullets and determined to get this to work and not to ruin my offset. And this has nothing to do with the final design that we end up using for this tumbler. So why am I showing it to you? Because I struggle with this near every single cup. This is my biggest issue, is decaling. I want to offset everything. I want to layer everything because I feel like that shows so much extra effort and it adds depth and dimension to my designs. And sometimes you really don't know how it's going to look. Even if you layer up scrap pieces of vinyl on top of your tumbler, it's not going to look the same as your decal or your final decal result once you place it on there. I've had quite a bit of comments on my tutorials in the past and even recently and I've tried to get better of showing my mistakes and the lumps and bumps that I have to jump over to get a design complete. But I've had some comments saying, I don't know how you do this so easy. You layered that vinyl so easy. Where do you come up with these designs? And I promise you, it is not without fault at some point. My craft room is a hot mess 80% of the time. And sometimes I have cups sitting around and video footage that I have recorded for months before I finish a cup. And I'm not whatsoever complaining. I just want y'all to know that it happens to everybody. So if you have a certain cup that is giving you all the trouble in the world, set that thing to the side if you have the time to. Take a breather and then come back to it later. There are also lots of groups out there that are more than willing to help you with designs and decals. My group in particular, if you post in there and ask, hey, what can I put on this cup or what vinyl colors will look great? Somebody is going to hop on there and help you if I don't get to you first. Okay, you're not alone. I know I've done a lot of blabbering, so you can see all of my struggles with this decal. So we're finally going to apply this. And then once I got it applied, like I said, I hated it and I took the vinyl off immediately. If you're doubting a design and you're using a permanent vinyl, save yourself the trouble in the end. Take it off right away so that permanent vinyl doesn't have time to make that secure lock onto your tumbler and leave residue behind. Those were really beautiful decals. It just covered up too much of that glitter that I really wanted to show through. And I don't think the white, that bright white offset, was fit for this tumbler. So I will have those linked down below in case you want to use it for another design. But I headed back over to Etsy and grabbed 2 new ones that have fine lines and to me had more of an abstract feel that went with this V-split design of the tumbler. I also cut some pinstriping and I didn't cut enough, but my main pinstripe is .008 And the smaller ones that I use on either side of it are 0.005 by 11.5 inches. On top of using up the last little bit of my shimmer vinyl, I actually did have to cut those first decals twice on the textured, and then for the final ones that I use, I actually cut the mountains 3 times and the beach side twice, and I'll explain that here in a bit. But first, before I start using my tiny little craft blade, because I could not find my craft knife, be careful if you choose to use it this way, because I slowed it down right here so you can see. I almost pressed my finger down and got myself an ER visit for some stitches. I'm telling you, this cup, y'all. But make sure you have it the right way before you use it without the actual handle itself. Good news though, as soon as I finished this tumbler, I found my craft knife. So for your pinstriping, you want those to cross over each other at the center point. And then you're going to take your craft knife or a sharp blade and press it directly down the seam of your striping and remove that excess, and it's going to leave you a perfect point. So after I got the second small stripe added on, I realized that I needed some for the other side. So back to how many times I had to cut these decals. So I went back and cut my 2 small pinstriping. I don't know what was going on with my Cricut machine. I guess it just sensed my urgency of wanting to get this tumbler done. I changed the blade, I restarted it, I unplugged it, tried to reset everything, and it was still cutting just completely wonky. I've had my original Cricut for almost 10 years now. I think it's finally time that I broke up with it. Let it know it's not me, it's definitely you, and get the newer model. So anyway, after I cut these, I realized that the original mountainside decal also cut just weird and didn't go all the way through in some places, so I recut that, and we were ready to finally apply our decals. Beach to our beach sunrise side and our mountains to our mountain sunset side. And then, once again, I had to recut them and then created a 0.03 offset with a light gray from Hobby Lobby. It's the Paper Studio brand. It's a no-fail offset when you don't want something super bright white, but you also want it light or bright enough to make your decal stand out just a little bit more. And once we finally had those decals on, it was time for our final coats of epoxy. I always put 2 coats of epoxy on top of my decals to make sure they are secure and sealed in. I'll use a fast set for the first of 2 final coats, and then I normally finish it off with a regular setting epoxy just because that's my preference. As always, all materials that I have used will be listed down in the description below with some coupon codes for you. Don't forget, these colors released on March 29th of 2023 at 2 p.m. MST time. That's 12 p.m. EST time. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments for me and I'll answer them as quickly as possible. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. That really helps us out. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.